Welcome back to Hannity. So earlier today at the highly anticipated RNC meeting, well, the Rules Committee decided not to change the convention rules. Now, according to reports, committee members feared that changing any of the rules would make it seem like they were trying to sway the nominating process. Well, someone joining us right now was in that meeting. Chairman of the Republican National Lawyers Association, member of the RNC Rules Committee, Randy Evans, and from the Hoover Institute, Lanhee Chen is with us. All right, Randy, you've been on the Rules Committee for how long now?
For 3 years.
Okay, so they didn't want to make changes because of appearances?
Well, for 3 reasons, really. First, we don't want to make changes in the middle of the game. We're in the 7th inning. Why would you change the rules for the last 2 innings of the game?
Yeah.
Second, because of the cynicism, the idea that no matter what we changed, I remember one colleague, Sean, said, if we change a semicolon to a comma, one of the 3 candidates will think that is directed toward them and that we're trying to make it more difficult for one candidate over the other. And the final one was really unintended consequences. If we had gone to Robert's Rules of Order, each of the 2,472 delegates could raise a point of order. If somebody wanted to run out the clock, in other words, make it through the whole 4 days that we end up without a nominee so that we have to then come back with all the delegates unbound, that would be the technique to do it, which is to have Robert's rules so that everybody could raise a point of order. With those kind of consequences at stake, the decision was made, let's just leave things the way they are. We played this much of the game under these rules. Let's finish the game under these rules.
I mean, the idea that every delegate would have time and be able to filibuster and come away 4 days later without a vote or a candidate would be absurd to me. And I assume that's why you kept the House rules, which I think was the right thing to do. Okay, Lanhee, let me ask you. Do you explain the next part of this process? So we're going to have candidates that have delegates that'll sit on the next Rules Committee, but that happens before the convention. Explain what happens there.
Yeah, Sean, in the week before the convention, traditionally several different committees have met at the Republican National Convention, and one of those committees is going to be the Convention Rules Committee, and their job is going to be to determine the rules that will govern that convention as well as the Republican Party for the next 4 years. So back in 2012, when I worked with Governor Romney's campaign, we put in place a whole set of rules for that convention in Tampa that have also now been the rules of the party for the last several years. So one of the things to note is that formal changes to the rules have to be adopted by that body, by that Convention Rules Committee, which will convene in Cleveland the week before the actual convention begins.
All right, Randy, back to you. A lot of prominent Republicans, John Boehner's one of them. Anybody can be nominated on the convention floor. Karl Rove, new faces. John Kasich's entire strategy seems to be that Rule 40B doesn't apply in this particular convention. Other people, Mitt Romney, go on straight on down the list. A lot of, Mitch McConnell suggested it this week. Is there any scenario under which the, quote, white knight candidate can come up on a 3rd or 4th round of balloting, maybe somebody that didn't even run this time?
Well, the consensus is no. The consensus is that Rule 40B, which requires that a majority of the delegation of 8 states support a person in order for their name to be put in nomination, will remain a part of the rules package. And then there's this other rule, which you never hear about, Sean. It's called Rule 4. It's 40E. And it says that once we start the balloting, we keep voting until one candidate gets 1237. So if you're not in nomination by the time we start the balloting, by the time we start counting the votes, then you're not going to get added later. Now, it is important to note that there is a provision in the rules that permits the rules to be suspended. A motion to suspend the rules is always in order at the National Convention. Now, if somebody moved to suspend the rules and that passed by a majority vote, and that in fact we then suspended the rules to permit more nominations, it's possible. But the reason I don't believe that will ever happen is between Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. They will control 2/3 of the delegates on the floor.
At
now,
least,
if you're
right?
those 2/3, you're not going to agree to change that rule, and so they won't have the votes to change the rule.